Go inside the Crimson Tide with your hosts Rodney Orr and Gary Harris, keeping you informed on everything Alabama. Tider Insider TV, brought to you by Tuscaloosa Tourism and Sports.
All right, good evening, everybody, and welcome into the latest edition of Tider Insider TV alongside Rodney Orr from TiderInsider.com. I'm WVUA 23 Sports Director Gary Harris, and this is the fastest 30 minutes in Alabama sports television. And on this past Saturday, it was a fast nearly three quarters because like Alabama was in good shape. But the Crimson Tide's victory over Arkansas would be anything but easy. Nick Saban's 200th on-field victory as the Alabama head coach went right down to the wire, and afterwards, Coach certainly wasn't in a mood to throw a big party. He said there's one thing to win the game, it's another thing to beat the team. Rodney, let's get into the highlights. The Crimson Tide was cruising in this game. I don't know any other way to put it. Not like they played great, but they were 24-6 late in the third quarter. I thought Arkansas, on that third down play, as we saw big plays in the first half, made this lead possible. I thought Arkansas was just ready to get onto the bus, but on a third down play, they get a stop deep in Arkansas territory, but away from the play. Jalen Key gets called for a defensive face mask, a personal foul penalty, extended the drive. Arkansas went on to score. They scored again early in the fourth quarter, and next thing you know, Alabama was hanging on. All right, Rodney, start with the good, and I guess the good was that Alabama did build that 18-point lead late in the third quarter.
Well, first of all, did you see Latham? He split those two.
Yeah.
But he got held by both of them. But anyway, yeah, no, look, I think Alabama, you mentioned in the first half, they played really well. That's what we've seen. We've seen a team that's played well in the second half for the last 2 or 3 weeks. Now it's in the first half. They don't play as well in the second half. So they've been a one-half team, basically. You know, look, they had Arkansas on the ropes. They were ready to knock them out. They just didn't do it. You mentioned the play that a lot of people attribute to kind of turning the momentum into Arkansas's favor. I thought Arkansas did a really good job, too. They started running, allowing K.J. Jefferson to scramble. He made a couple of big scrambles, Gary, in those drives that they scored touchdowns on. And then he had the play, and I don't know if we got the video here, but Terry and Arnold had him sacked. That was a big play. It would have made it third and long. He gets away, makes the throw, and, you know, all of a sudden you got a game.
You mentioned the tale of two halves. How about this, Rodney? First half, Jalen Milroe, 7 of 10 for 215 yards and 2 touchdowns. I mean, that's like, nearly 30 yards of completion. Second half, 3 of 11 for 23 yards. That's remarkable, the difference. What happened?
Well, first of all, his passer rating at one point was like 468. Yeah. And then all of a sudden, like you said, in the second half. And again, I think he missed some throws. He had some guys open. I really don't know exactly what happened, but I do know this. When he had to make that throw, he had a guy in his face, and he delivers the throw to Amari Niblack. I mean, that was a big-time play. And there you see, of course, the Prentice throw that was from very early in the game. But, again, it seems like sometimes, Gary, when he's struggling, he finds a way to make a play at the right time.
He does. And listen, if you just looked at the stats, unlike maybe some other games, you would have thought Alabama dominated this game. They outscored. Arkansas still only had 250 total yards. Remarkably, until they got that penalty on Key, they were under 100 yards of total offense. Alabama had well over 400. Didn't turn the ball over. Still had a couple critical penalties. Again, I don't want to make too much out of this, but if you're Alabama, you're still looking for a complete game, Rodney. It just seems like they can't put one together. If they do, maybe it won't go right down to the wire. Maybe they'll wind up winning one of these SEC games comfortably.
Yeah, they need to start putting some together now because this is a good team coming in Tennessee. And then, of course, you've got some challenges coming down the road, Gary, that are going to be a lot stiffer.
What about Malachi Moore being out in that secondary? Most of the day it wasn't a problem, but late in the game, there were some errors back there, whether it be the pass interference on downs, the penalty on Key. He's such a calming factor on that secondary. How much do you think he was missed?
Well, I think you're always, when you miss a guy that's got that kind of experience, the leadership that he has, the knowledge that he has back there, Gary, and you're right. I mean, I think he kind of directs traffic back there a little bit because of his experience. And, again, anytime you lose a guy like that, it can certainly have an effect.
3.5 sacks for the defensive end for Arkansas by himself. Alabama's given up 31 sacks in 7 football games, Rodney. That's over 4 games. How big a concern?
Well, I think it's a big concern, but I do think, too, it's a combination of things. I mean, obviously, you've got a young left tackle that we watched him from the press box. We could see he was getting beat off the ball several times. But at the same time, too, I think holding the ball. You've got to get rid of it. You look at, Pro Football Focus came out and said Jalen Milroe is 14th in the SEC, 14 out of 14 in terms of holding on the ball. 3.4 seconds. You want to get rid of it within 2.5. certainly under 3, and he's going almost 3.5. So I think it's a combination of things in terms of those sacks, and hopefully they can get that alleviated.
All right, Rod, speaking of the offensive line, that's going to be the subject of coach talk. As many people concerned about the offensive line, mainly in pass blocking. We mentioned 31 sacks allowed this season, and Nick Saban understands that there are issues with getting people blocked up front.
You know, we have to do a really good job planning-wise, and we have to fundamentally play better. You know, it's a combination of both. And both those things are, you know, coaching and teaching things that we need to do better. You know, I guess you always hope that if we move the right tackle to left tackle, that would make everything better. But I guess the question you have to also ask yourself is, would that make us any better at right tackle? Or do you just try to attack the solution of trying to get the left tackle to play to the standard that you need him to play without making multiple changes in the offensive line?
Let me transcribe that. They ain't moving anybody on the offensive line. So fans have keep calling my radio show, why don't they do this? He just said it. They're going to try to get Proctor and Pritchett better at left tackle. He likes J.C. Latham at right tackle. They love Booker at left guard over there left to tackle. And I got to tell you something. Number 77 has come there at right guard for an alien Darian Dalcourt, and he is a big physical presence. Mm-hmm. And, of course, McLaughlin's been there a long time at center. So that's going to be the offensive line. And they may continue to play 2 left tackles. Terrence Ferguson gets healthy. Maybe he works in there at the guard position, as could Dalcourt if he comes back. But as far as swapping tackles, people just need to get that out of their head. Saban said it's not going to happen.
Yeah, I think if that was going to happen, it probably would have happened back in the spring, because you would have gotten guys acclimated to that position, moved JC over there. You had Proctor here in the spring, so if you wanted to try him at right tackle or use him there, I think you certainly would have done that in the spring or more so. And even going into fall camp, you want to have that set. So, no, they're not going to make that change. You mentioned Jaden Roberts. He is playing really, really well at that right guard spot. So maybe we start to see, and sometimes they do this, you know, Oots or whoever, whether it's a Nye Black or one of those tight ends helping chip that the pass rusher on that side. So I think maybe that's something that we see more of. We'll see.
Yeah, you mentioned Roberts has done a great job, big and physical. We don't know what Dalcourt's status is. That could change there with the right guard. But real final thought on Roberts. He really never even played hardly until the A&M game. Then he gets thrust into a starting role on short notice. Has really done a nice job.
Yeah, you know, we'd heard a lot of really good things about him, but sometimes, you know, it's your opportunity. When that chance comes, you have to be ready. And when that opportunity came for Jaden Roberts against Texas A&M, he slid right in there and did a great job.
More news from the Arkansas game. After the first extra point in that game, Crimson Tide place kicker Will Reichard became the SEC all-time leading scorer, 481st point of his career. He finished the game with 3 PATs and 1 field goal, leaving him at 485 career points, which is 7th on the NCAA all-time scoring list. He's going to have a chance to break that record. Many of Reichard's kicks have been huge in Alabama wins, and he's certainly an asset. He hasn't missed a kick, Rodney, since last year. Just a quick thought on Will Reichard and how solid and how big it is for a team that plays a lot of close games to have a good kicker.
Just incredible. I mean, he really is incredible. We've seen some good ones through the years, whether it's Van Tiffen, Lee Tiffen, going back to Peter Kim. There's been some great place kickers here. Philip Doyle, we could go on and on and on. But this guy is as good as any of them. And I'll tell you what, Gary, I bet you there wasn't a stadium in the country last Saturday that had 2 better kickers than Alabama's and Arkansas.
Yeah, the Arkansas guy was incredible, too. Both those guys just automatic. All right, Bama in the NFL now. And I said this on my sportscast earlier, I'm going to say it again. It ain't over until Julio says it's over. Rodney, when you're that great and you've been that great, there's always going to be a team that says, hey, I believe he's still got some gas in the tank. I've been tracking the guy because I love him. He's one of my favorite players. He's been working out in Atlanta. He's in good shape. The Eagles are looking for a 3rd wide receiver. They've already got A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith, but they've struggled a little bit in the red zone this year. Julio's a big target. Adding him to that offense, I think it's a great move for the Eagles. If it doesn't work out, it doesn't really cost you much. You just signed him to a 1-year contract.
I think it is a really good move, and you talked about that. You know, he and A.J. Brown together, wow, I mean, you know, by the way, when A.J. came out of high school, his idol, that was his idol, Julio Jones.
Yeah, just one of the all-time great wide receivers, all-decade team for 2010, 7-time Pro Bowler, 2-time first-team All-Pro, 903 receptions for 13,629 yards. And like I said, when he got healthy last year late for the Bucs, he was productive. He just needs to be healthy. Now he's healthy. Hadn't been healthy the last couple of years, so we'll see what he can do there in Philadelphia for a Super Bowl contender. All right, still to come on Tider Insider Television, the Tide lands a new recruit in the class of 2025. We'll tell you all about him. Also, it's almost the third Saturday in October, and that's when that game is supposed to be played, Alabama-Tennessee. Not on the fourth Saturday. Third Saturday again this year. We're going to talk much more about the big rivalry. It's a rivalry again. You know why? Tennessee finally won one last year. That's all it takes. Plus, later on, we'll be welcoming your phone calls, emails, and tweets. As always, that phone number 205-348-WVUA. That's 348-9882. Or you can email us at the address on your screen. We're the only show that takes you inside the Crimson Tide. Tider Insider TV will return right after this. Well, after 15 straight Alabama wins in the series, this was last year, and it was no fun if you were an Alabama player, coach, or fan. And I guess that is what happens. Alabama wouldn't know what this is like to lose to your rival 15 times in a row. Remember when they lost 7 to Tennessee or 6 to Auburn?
Yeah.
That drove Bama fans crazy. Imagine 15 in a row. Well, I guess this is the way you act. Tearing down the goalpost, running into Alabama players, and then parading the goalpost down to the Tennessee River. I guess they dumped them in the river. But they had a big time, Rodney. 52-49 was the final score in that game. Welcome back into TITV, brought to you by Tuscaloosa Tourism and Sports. Alongside Rodney Orr, I am Gary Harris. Well, let's get to it. This year's game, I don't think last year has anything to do with it, other than I think now Alabama knows what it's like. These players had never lost to Tennessee. In fact, no Alabama team under Nick Saban ever had. You'd have to go back to Mike Shula. But they did lose last year, and now Alabama is at home. They're an 8.5-point favorite in this game. This is a much different Tennessee team and a much different Alabama team. Last year, Hendon Hooker and Bryce Young threw it all over the field. Almost were unstoppable. Now you've got Joe Milton and Jalen Milroe, two different types of quarterbacks. I would say this, based on their passing this year, Milroe's been a more efficient passer than Milton, but Milton is a load. And we saw late in the game against Jefferson how big, strong, physical quarterbacks can extend plays and sometimes make plays even when there's nothing there. So Alabama needs to be concerned. Tennessee's defensive front is experienced. They're coached well by Rodney Garner. They can get after the quarterback. We know that's been a problem for Alabama, but it's been the Tennessee run game as far as their offense that surprisingly has led the way for them. Yeah,
they have a really strong run game. They ran for 231 against Texas A&M last week, and look at Alabama ran for 23 the week before. Sometimes comparing those types of things, though, it doesn't really play out that way, so you have to be careful statistically. But you're right, Joe Milton has a really strong arm. There's a very ill-advised pass. He's been inconsistent. His stats are a lot like Milroe's. He's got 11 touchdown passes. Milroe's got 11. He's got 10. They both have 4 interceptions. They're both completing about 63% of their passes, throwing for about 1,300 yards each. Very similar statistically. And, athletically, they're pretty I think Milroe might be a little better athletically, but you're talking about Joe Milton is a tremendous athlete. And he's a guy, Gary, he's got the ability, very strong arm. If he gets hot, he can throw it.
Yeah, he can, and you don't want to see that happen. I mentioned, we've already talked a lot about Alabama's offensive line, but one of the keys will be how that offensive line matches up against this Tennessee defensive front. Even last year, we saw Tennessee's defensive front really hit to Bryce Young a lot in that game.
Yes, they did.
And most of those guys are back.
And a lot of those hits were late.
Yeah, they were.
Or questionable anyway. But, no, you're right. I mean, I think they have about 25 or 26 sacks. They've got some great pass rushers, Gary. They can certainly put a lot of pressure, and we've seen that's an issue with Alabama. So that's going to be something to watch very early in this game.
We're watching practice video from today. Alabama always in full pads on Tuesday. And you hear Nick Saban always say this. All coaches say this. The game really isn't won on Saturday. The game is won during the week. How important is preparation this week for the Crimson Tide?
I think you're right. Gary, I think the mindset, you have to have the mindset right. And I think preparation throughout the week is extremely important. We heard last week, we heard some things that maybe the preparation wasn't going as smoothly as they hoped coming off that win. We talked about it could be a trap game with Arkansas because you're coming off that emotional win at Texas A&M. And you know what? Maybe that caught them a little bit.
There's the defensive line. A lot of good-looking young football players up front on D for Bama. More on this game, including our score predictions, coming up later on. Well, now to recruiting. Alabama landed a commitment in the class of 2025 over the weekend. Linebacker Miles Johnson out of T.R. Miller and Bruton, a really good high school program. And this is a guy, you see the athletic build. He's sitting this year out with a torn ACL. Got another year of high school football. He came to camp, came to the cookout in June. Alabama offered him on the spot. And he felt like this was pretty much where he was always going to go when he got time to make a commitment. But this is a guy who's very athletic. Disappointed he's not getting to play this year, but Alabama liked what they saw, obviously.
Yeah, I think it was you and I spoke.
Yeah, very early on about him.
In June, and we heard that he was performing extremely well. He was one of the standouts in the camp. And look, when Kevin Steele looks at you and he likes you and he eyeballs you like that, you know that this guy's got some ability. And I think a lot of schools, if he wouldn't have been injured right now, Gary, you'd probably see more schools kind of jumping on him.
Yeah, he can run, and that's the way defensive football played today. You got to be able to run fast. All right, let's move on to Alabama soccer. The team is really, really good again. They've been ranked in the top 25 all year. They beat LSU on Friday night 4-1. LSU scored the first goal of the match, but after that it was all Alabama. Alabama has not lost at home. They've had some draws, but they haven't lost at home in 28 straight matches. How about that? Alabama soccer headed to Ole Miss on Thursday to face the Rebels at 6 p.m. on the SEC Network Plus. Well, still to come on Tider Insider TV. Our latest update on Bama players in the NFL. We had a little bit on Julio Jones, but players this past weekend. And we'll get to your phone calls, emails, and tweets. Again, the phone number 205-348-9882. You can email us at the address on your screen or reach out to us on social media. We'll be right back after this. So many former Bama players in the NFL. Sometimes they go head-to-head like Tua and Bryce. Listen, Bryce got off to a fast start. He looked good. They led 14-0 to the Dolphins, who are explosive. Tua's an MVP candidate. He and Waddle hook up right here. Dolphins win 42-21. Tua played Bryce this year. This week he plays Mac Jones running. The next week he plays Jalen Hurts.
Man.
How about that? Let's go to some other Bama players. I tell you what, Brian Robinson is just solid. Man, there he catches a big touchdown pass for the Commanders. They beat the Falcons. Jalen Hurts did not have his best game, but watch this. And that's Quinnen Williams catching the deflection right there. A nose tackle with his first career interception, and it came against his former Bama teammate. And the Jets upset the Eagles for their first loss of the year, the Eagles. And this is Jameson Williams. This is what he does, man. He gets behind the defense, makes a nice adjustment on that ball. Rodney, he's back. And the Lions, they're 5-1. Did you realize that?
No, I didn't. Is that his first TD reception? Right
I think this year. He got one or two last year. That's your Bama in the NFL update. All right, welcome back, and we're going to get to some phone calls, and we're going to get led off tonight by our pal Sammy up in Walker County. Hey, Sammy, good evening.
Hello, Gary and Rodney. Great guys, job guys. Let me start off and say I like the progression of the defense, but we all can see the problems, offensive line related. I think that relates to some of the play of the quarterback. But we address the problems, and it's getting late in the season, boys. I mean, it's getting late. I mean, we know the problems are not getting cleaned up. They're
Sammy,
just not getting cleaned up.
Yeah, you're right, and we've talked a lot about it tonight. I'm still going to say this, as foolish as this may sound 7 games in, I still think this is a really talented group. And like Rodney said, you got a true freshman at left tackle. You got another left tackle that has hardly played. You got a new right guard. The talent is there. I still believe Eric Wolf, for the offensive line coach, Rodney, is going to get this group together. I do think they're going to get better, and I hope it starts this week against Tennessee.
Well, I thought they ran the ball a little bit better against Arkansas. I thought they ran it with more consistency. I really liked seeing some more backs get involved. Jam Miller, I thought, had some really good runs. Obviously, Jason Roydell, and even Justice Haynes got a run or two. But it's an issue right now, Sammy. They've got to try to continue to improve that. Obviously, this is a big game coming up. Then you have an off week. Sometimes teams use that off week. They really make a lot of ground, and that includes the quarterback, Jalen Milroe. I think, he's going to have some opportunity over that off week to continue to get better. But again, you got Tennessee coming. This is a really big game, so hopefully they'll play more like they did in the second half against Texas A&M than they did, in the second half of this last game.
That's a great point on the bye week. All right, let's get to Travis in Northport. Hey, Travis.
Hey, guys. I saw Alabama basketball is ranked 24th in the nation and 5th in the SEC. I think that's a little too low. I wanted your guys' thoughts on that.
Yeah, AP poll 24th. I think in some power polls they're higher. Listen, it really doesn't matter at this point. I think I'm a little surprised. At the same time now, I know they've recruited well, but they basically turned over the entire roster, Rodney.
Yeah.
So
how do you predict that?
That's what I'm saying. So I probably would have, if I had a vote in the AP poll, I probably would have voted him about 15th. So, Travis, I would have gone higher. Do want to mention Grant Nelson, the transfer forward out of North Dakota State, is first team All-SEC preseason, and Mark Sears, their great guard, is second team All-SEC. But right now, it doesn't really matter. If they get out and win some games, they'll move up in that poll in a hurry. All right, we're going to get to the break. We're going back with more TITV, more phone calls, plus baseball is back at the Joe, and we'll get to that as the Crimson Tide had a dominant performance against Auburn during fall ball this past Friday night. Again, there's the phone number, 205-348-9882. We'll be right back with more of your phone calls after this. Bama baseball, they're off to a really good start under Rob Vaughn. I know it's fall ball, but you're still trying to win. Alabama on Friday night took out in-state rival Auburn 5-2 and 10-0 in a pair of 7-inning games. I'm telling you, this Bama team can mash the baseball. Good start for the Crimson Tide. All right, welcome back into the program with Rodney Orr. I'm Gary Harris. And it's time to get to our email question of the day. The email question today is brought to you by KDM Service Corporation. KDM Service Corporation, all your heating and air conditioning needs taken care of, serving your family like our family. All right, what is the latest on Malachi Moore's injury? Any other questionable players for Saturday? David in Tuscaloosa. Rodney?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, we really don't know in terms of the other players questionable, nor Malachi Moore for that matter. I think he did practice some last week. I'm not really sure in terms of getting an update this week on what his availability will be, but I bet you we have a better idea maybe tomorrow when Coach Saban talks.
All right, thanks for the phone calls and emails. Sorry we couldn't get to more emails or phone calls, but we just ran out of time because we got to have some time for predictions. We'll do that next. What do we think? You'll find out when we return to TITV.
All right, it's prediction time. I'll lead off as always. Look, I think we're going to see a better version of Alabama this week. It's a home game. I think that gives Alabama a little bit of an edge here. So I'm going 24-20, Alabama over Tennessee, revenge.
I hear you, Rodney. I agree that Alabama is going to win the game. I got a little more confidence in the Tide this weekend. I think they're going to put that game together. If not 4 quarters, maybe 3.5 quarters. I think Alabama rolls over the Vols in a pretty decisive fashion. Can we bring the score up? So take a look at it. There we go. 27-17. I like Bama by 10 on Saturday afternoon. All right, that's going to do it for the show. A reminder, you can catch a replay tonight at 10:30 on WVUA 23 or find it anytime at WVUA23.com. We're going to leave you with some video from the Crimson Classic. Alabama Cross Country won the men's, women's, team, and individual titles on Friday. Good night, everybody.